Is this thing on? Morning. Good morning. Welcome to Hope. Glad that you are here with us on this day. We believe a relationship with Jesus Christ can change your life. That's why we do what we do. It has been a goofy couple of weeks. I know some folks are very tired because you've been up since 6 a.m., right? Yes. And sadly, didn't happen. That's all right. That's all right. The Huskies beat Oregon, so that's really all that matters for all of our Husky fans in the room. All right, good. We'll have a chance to be able to just have a lot of fun here this morning, get a chance to sing together, have an opportunity for communion. So for those of you who are watching us from home, if you have communion elements and want to get those out, you can do that as well. We'll gather together here. Have an opportunity to have a little conversation about women in the Old Testament. It's a fascinating conversation that we're going to be able to dive in on that. And then later on, we will end up having a conversation about what's next for us as a church, what's next for us as Hope. So we'll be talking about that. For those of you watching online, there will actually be a separate live stream for that. And we'll put the link for that in the chat and try and send that out. Make sure you all get that. So when we're done here, we'll get a chance to stand up, have some coffee, and then we'll move on into that conversation right after. So that's our plan this morning. It's going to be a good one.
Hi, everybody. Are you glad that the cold is here? Let's stand and sing. We're going to do a new one today. This song's called I Thank God. Wandering into the night, wanting a place to hide this weary soul, this bag of bones. And I tried with all my might, and I just can't win the fight. I'm slowly drifting, a vagabond. And just when I ran out of road, I met a man I couldn't know. He told me that I was not alone. He picked me up, he turned me around, he placed my feet on solid ground. I thank the Master, I thank the Savior, because he healed my heart, he changed my name, forever free. I am not the same. I thank the Master, I thank the Savior, I thank God. I cannot deny what I see. Got no choice but to believe. My doubts are burning like ashes in the wind. So long to my old friends, oh, burden and bitterness. You can just keep it moving. Nah, you ain't welcome here. From now till I walk the streets of gold, I'll sing about you saved my soul. This wayward son has found his way back home. He picked me up and turned me around. He placed my feet on solid ground. I thank the Master, I thank the Master, I thank the Savior, because he healed my heart, he changed my name, forever free. I am not the same. I thank the Master, I thank the Savior, I thank God. All right, so the recording of this song has like a big old choir, like a gospel choir. You guys can do that, right? Okay, I knew it. So We're going to sing this bridge together. You guys had full confidence. Every one of you were like, yeah, absolutely. The bridge goes like this. You guys are going to sing along. We're going to sing it lots of times, okay? Well, hell lost another one. I am free. I am free. I am free. Sing it again. Hell lost another one. I am free. I am free. I keep going. Come on now.
Hell lost another one. I am free. I am free.
All right, I'm going to change it on you. Hell lost another one. I am free. I am free. I keep singing. Hell lost another one. I am free. I am free. I am free. Hell lost another one. I am free. I am free. I am free. Hell lost another one. I am free. I am. One more time.
I am free.
Hell lost another one. I am free. You sound great.
I am free. I am free.
He picked me up. He turned me around. He placed my feet on solid ground. I thank the Master. I thank the Savior. Because he healed my heart. He changed my name. Forever free. I am not the same. I thank the Master. I thank the Savior. I thank God. I thank God. Oh, I thank God. You guys really sound great out there, man. You guys are hired. You're hired. All right, give me 1 second. I got to change this chord chart so that I'm in the right key. I don't want to play the wrong chords. All right. As I see it fall like lightning, I saw darkness run for cover. But the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven. I believe in signs and wonders. I have resurrection power. Yes, I do. Still the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven. Yeah. My praise belongs to you forever. This is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story, I'll testify. By Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony, this is my testimony. Come together. Come together, sons and daughters, bought with blood and washed with water. Sing the praises of the Spirit, Son, and Father. Our God will finish what He started. Yes, our God will finish what He started. This is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story, I'm testifying. By Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony, this is my testimony. This is my testimony. You ready for another choir? If I'm not dead, then you're not done. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, then you're not dead. Greater things are still to come. Oh, come on, choir.
If I'm not dead and you're not done, greater things
If I'm not dead, then you're not done. Greater things are still to come, oh, I believe. Hey. This is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story, I'll testify. But Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony, oh, I'm alive. This is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story, I'll testify. By Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. Yeah.
Amen. Amen. Hey, before you find your seats, go ahead and turn to someone near you. It's nearly Thanksgiving, so tell somebody what had better be on the table when you get there for that Thanksgiving meal. What makes it?
Deviled eggs. Yeah, it's my favorite thing. It's my weakness. Yeah, I think it's actually in my bio on the church website. If you want to be best friends with me, bring me food. Do you want us out of here?
Then actually after that, we'll pull that table up and do a talk out there anyway.
Okay, do you want this out of the way or no?
Yeah, when we do that.
Will you stay? We're gonna stay. He's gonna intro communion and then we'll get started. We're gonna stay. He's gonna intro communion and then we're gonna start playing. So keep your eyes on me for because we're only one station, so we're gonna be moving slow. So our instrumentals might be longer. But whatnot.
Fantastic. All right. All right, fantastic, good. Well, again, welcome to Hope. So glad to have you here. If I haven't met yet, I'm Bill Wallace. I'm the pastor here. Thanks to everyone joining us online. Again, there's 2 live streams today, this one now, and then we're going to have one for a little informational meeting we'll be doing later. I also forgot to mention that we're having a conversation about a mission trip to Mexico that will be happening after our informational meeting. So we're very much looking forward to that conversation. That will actually probably be down at the Milk House, as we will, we'll have spent way too much time in church at that point. Oh my goodness, right? So we'll go get some coffee and do that. But that'll happen after that informational meeting. So that one won't be live streamed. If you have questions about that, we'll just be able to answer those offline later on. If you were here last week, I apologize because we weren't. We came early. It was really dark and really cold, and so we tried to get information out to y'all that we were going to try and do something different, try and live stream a service. I think we actually have some behind-the-scenes footage of what that looked like. Look at that setup. Look at that studio setup we've got there. That was pretty nice. They were there so that it looked like I could preach to someone. I thought that was actually super helpful. This was our lighting setup that we had. So we've got that going on. And here's the roadie. Look at that. That's right. Sage thoroughly enjoyed last week. Here, Dad, here's the guitar. So, one of the cool things about over these last couple years, we figured out how to try and connect on live stream options. So those of you who just normally watch online, we actually love it. We love that we have an online community. We think that's really, really great. Thankful that last week we were able to do that. Many thanks to the Dells for having power and internet. Thank you. Well done. Good job. Yes, I know you had a lot to do with it. But yeah, that was a lot of fun for those of you that did show up here last week. Apologies for that. Hopefully that won't happen again. So we'll see. All right. One of the things that we get to, we're supposed to do Connect cards here now, aren't we? See, honestly, whenever Simone's gone, it's just a disaster. Yeah, come on up and do that. That'd be great. Margot and Katie have some cards. We'd love for you to take one of those, fill those out. And do you have colored pencils? Solid. Very good. So grab one of those cards, fill that out with whatever's going on for you if you'd like to be on our mailing list. And if you didn't get the email from last week, check in on that because we did send something out pretty early to highlight that. Grab that. Any prayer requests that you might have, you can do those. And again, you can do that online you can find that at Church Center, Planning Center, find Hope Church on there and do that. Excellent. One of the things that we get to do together as well, the first Sunday of the month typically, which would have been last week, and because of everything, we decided that we would wait until this week. We get to share in the gift of Holy Communion. Communion is exactly that. It's a gift that was given by Jesus to his friends, and then from there shared with all of the church as this ongoing gift, an opportunity to be reminded that there is a God who loves us so much that he meets us where we're at, in our brokenness and in our mess, whatever's going on in our life. He meets us right there and tells us, you, I love you. My grace is here for you. And so we take time to recognize that in this meal. As part of that, I actually invite you to do whatever's helpful in this time, to bow your head, close your eyes, take a moment to recognize where you might need Jesus to come into your life, even here on this day. And to all who have made such confession, know these words to be true. Then on the night in which he was betrayed, our Lord Jesus took bread, gave thanks, and he broke it. And he gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take and eat. This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." Again, after supper, he took the cup, gave thanks, and he gave it for all to drink, saying, "This cup is a new covenant in my blood, shed for you and for many, for the forgiveness of sin. Do this in remembrance of me." Now, as part of this ancient meal, we also share in the ancient words of the Lord's Prayer. Let's share this together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. All right, invite our communion servers to come forward at this time. We'll give just a few instructions about. I'm going to invite Erica and Greg to come forward, because is that who I got? Perfect, good, all right. Thanks, Erica. A few instructions about communion. So we receive communion through intinction here at Hope. And what that means is that you'll be invited to come forward and you'll receive bread, and then you dip that bread in either the chalice that has dark wine or that has light grape juice. There's wine or grape juice, so you dip the bread in either one. We have gluten-free wafers as well. So if you prefer that, you can ask for that. Come forward and either, again, request the bread or the wafers. And then there's the wine or the grape juice. You are invited to come forward as you are ready. We'll invite the praise team forward first, then they'll continue to lead us in worship. After you've done that, you can return back to your seats and come forward as you are so ready. For the table is ready, and you are welcome here.
You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna never gonna let me down. You're 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 never gonna let me down.
You are good.
You're never gonna let me down.
You are good.
You're never gonna let
Oh, you are good.
You're never gonna let
Oh. When the night is holding on to me, God is holding on. When the night is holding on to me, God is holding on. 'Cause you are good, good. Oh, 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 you are good.
You're never gonna let me down.
You are good.
You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down.
You are good. You are good.
You're never gonna let me down.
Amen. Amen. Again, in this meal, we have met Jesus. We have been forgiven. Amen to that. All right. We are going to dismiss our Kids for Kids Club at this time. So, fifth grade and younger, if you want to meet up with your kids, fantastic. If you haven't checked out the treasure chest that is out there that our friend Kim has got going on, make sure you connect with her about that. That's a super cool thing that we are doing with our kids now every month as well. So that'll be a good time. Perfect. And then, I'm going to invite my friend Kayla to come on up also. DJ, you out there somewhere? We got... Okay. Thanks, my friend. Want to hand those out? That'd be perfect. Very good. Make sure you grab one of those. This is a conversation, but we thought we'd give an outline in terms of what we think we're going to talk about. We'll see if that actually really happened. Wow.
This is not distracting for anybody.
Fantastic. All right. So we'll introduce this just a little bit and then dive in, and we actually won't be able to talk as long as I would like, unfortunately. Well, that's really true any week. Every,
Well, especially if you have us both up here.
right, oh, yeah, the two of us together with everything else we've got going on. But I'm really glad. I always appreciate Kayla's insights, but especially in terms of what we're going to be talking about today, I just thought you would have some insight that I certainly would not, because we're going to be talking about specifically about some of the roles that women play within these origin stories that we've been talking about. So if you've been at Hope for the last couple weeks, you know that we have been looking at what we call origin stories. Exactly that, the idea that there are these stories coming out of Genesis that were so important for the origins of faith for God's people during that time, and what they still say to us even in our day today, how that continues to connect to us. So as we've been doing that, we just started to really see one particular aspect to this. You've seen it already a little bit, but once you really get into Abraham and Sarah's story, that actually drives home the point. When we talk about it, we talk about Abraham and Sarah. Now we're going to talk about Isaac and Rebekah. We're going to talk about Rachel and Leah. We're going to start talking about women in a time when women were, often at best, second-class citizens.
Dispensable?
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes, yeah, they could be considered property, like all kinds of things from that standpoint. So we get a lot of information from them. We get to hear part of their thinking. In fact, as we continue to go through the Bible, women become the heroes in a number of different stories. We see that in Ruth. We see that in Esther. You see that with Deborah. So the fact that we get all those really, really cool stories from women, again, for me, highlights that as God is helping to breathe life into these stories, he's making sure that it's not just going to be male patriarchal stories. It's a really, really cool thing that we even get these stories. And then, again, for me, as I read them, they're real. They're not fairy tale creatures here. They're people that do real things that there's a part of it, I think, man, are we supposed to celebrate that or not? And so we're going to look at some of those. So
I get a little nervous right off the bat because I feel like there's like a little bit of doublespeak that happens when we talk about women of the Bible. You know, I didn't grow up in the church, but by the time I did make my way to church, and they're talking about, women of the Bible, I really felt like people were like really cherry picking, like really trying to find those women whose stories, like, yeah, they were mentioned, but let's like really class them up so we make sure that, our audience knows that we actually respect women or something. Like I felt like it was really intentional trying to be like, hey, we're one of those cool churches. And then we talk about like, hey, we're really glad that we get to hear those stories. It's really odd that they're in the Bible because it was a patriarchy. But we'll tell you how it's really important. But there's so few of them in there. So I feel like there's that constant, like, for me, the cynical side of me is looking at like, oh, we're trying to play them up to make sure that we're inclusive. And I felt like that for a long time. I think it probably wasn't until recently, because I think you'd had a sermon, my time backwards is really kind of skewed, but about how men in the Bible, like those leaders were kind of seen as like deceivers. Like it was now with our hindsight looking back, we'd see that as like underhanded ways that they made their way there. But I think it's really interesting to see some of the women's stories and see how, again, looking back in hindsight, it seems almost like an underhanded way that they got there. Maybe it was a little deceit, maybe it was a little like behind the scenes action, and then just to dismiss it. Like those weren't women in power, those were women who were using their womanly wiles or whatever to get to these places, and that's not respectable. I think it's important to look at through that lens of that culture, where you can say like, no, that's what they loved. Like that's what they honored and they respected, that sort of behavior. When you're, there's this terrible phrase, it's not cheating, it's getting results. But it's that, they used the means that they had. And I love these stories throughout the Bible because it's showing that they had those means. They had those means and they used them and they got these results. And the fact that they are honored in that male society, it's like, it's not saying, hey, here's a couple stories about women. It's saying, no, here were people that rose up to the occasion regardless of their gender.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then being able to have like that perspective on it has helped me. So I don't know if anyone else is struggling like, oh, they're going to pick like the 5 important women from the Bible. Yeah, it's a different, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I get you. I think I put in there a number of different stories. I wasn't sure which all ones we would do, but we talked about real briefly one a couple of weeks ago, so I wanted to reread that and then read a little bit of 27 because that gets exactly to what you're talking about. So first, we'll have Genesis chapter 16, verses 1 to 6. And if you were here a few weeks ago, I think you heard this, but just so that this is in front of us again, kind of name this for what this is. All right, now Sarai, this is Abraham's wife. So when we talk about Abraham and Sarah, this is his wife, Sarai, before her name has been changed. So now Sarai, Abraham's wife, had not been able to bear children for him, but she had an Egyptian servant named Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, "The Lord has prevented me from having children. Go and sleep with my servant. Perhaps I can have children through her." And Abram agreed with Sarai's proposal. So Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, the Egyptian servant, and gave her to Abram as a wife. This happened 10 years after Abram had settled in the land of Canaan. So Abram had sexual relations with Hagar, and she became pregnant. But when Hagar knew that she was pregnant, she began to treat her mistress Sarai with contempt. And Sarai said to Abram, "This is all your fault. I put my servant into your arms, but now that she's pregnant, she treats me with contempt. The Lord will show you who's wrong, you or me." If I were making up a religion from scratch,
I would not include this.
I would not include this story in there. Right? Wow.
In my mind, there's not really a part of this that's redeemable. And that's why God is so good, because he is able to figure out something out of this. And if we went and we adhered strictly to those stereotypical gender roles, Sarah right here, like that's, again, the limits of our language, that's totally a man move. I'm going to make this happen here, like by any means necessary. And it's a bummer to see, again, looking at it from this like more modern perspective, especially if like you have like a feminist perspective, you're like, she just used another woman to get what she wanted. Like this isn't, I don't know, it's really hard to say, oh, she was trying to like move along God's plan, because she's clearly just doing this out of fear that it wasn't going to work out. You know, God made a promise, it's clearly not working. Let me use someone who's beneath me to get what is mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't like this story.
No.
I'm not a fan of this story. No.
Not a fan. Not a fan of that one. All right, so yes, let's see if you're a fan of this one. So we're going to jump all the way to Jacob. If you're tracking along with us, Abraham and Sarah have Isaac eventually as well. They have Isaac on their own. Hagar has Ishmael. We talked about that. Was that 2 weeks ago? Now Isaac marries Rebekah, and Rebekah has 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. Esau is the older son. Jacob is the younger son. We jump into the story here, verse 27. So one day when Isaac was old and turning blind, he called for Esau, his older son, and said, "My son." "Yes, father," Esau replied. "I'm an old man now," Isaac said, "and I don't know when I may die. Take your bow and a quiver full of arrows and go out into the open country to hunt some wild game for me. Prepare my favorite dish and bring it here for me to eat. Then I will pronounce the blessing that belongs to you, my firstborn son, before I die." We could do a long tangent on what specifically that blessing is and what that means, but we'll not do that so we can kind of talk about this other aspect. But that's a very specific thing from a cultural standpoint, given to the oldest son. So, verse 5. But Rebekah overheard what Isaac had said to his son Esau. So when Esau left to hunt for the wild game, she said to her son Jacob, "Listen, I overheard your father say to Esau, 'Bring me some wild game and prepare a delicious meal. Then I will bless you in the Lord's presence before I die. Now, my son, listen to me. Do exactly as I tell you. Go out to the flocks and bring me 2 fine young goats. I'll use them to prepare your father's favorite dish. Then take the food to your father so he can eat it and bless you before he dies.' But look," Jacob replied to Rebekah, "my brother Esau is a hairy man, and my skin is smooth." That's my favorite part of the whole story. What if my father touches me? He'll see that I'm trying to trick him, and then he'll curse me instead of blessing me. But his mother replied, then let the curse fall on me, my son. Just do what I tell you. Go out and get the goats for me. And the story goes on from there. And they do it. They trick him.
And the father, Isaac, is lying in bed blind because he's sold.
Yeah.
So now we talk about tricking disabled people, too.
Yeah.
And the whole respecting your husband, just kidding. I think there's a lot of times in the Bible where, actually, we could just say like the entire Bible is built on God using other people's shortcomings to get done what he needs to get done anyway. And I think we talked about this before. There's kind of a side tangent. There's a really good story about Samson in the Old Testament. And he's supposed to be, like a hero of the Israelites, and he goes and he marries a Philistine woman. And long story, he doesn't actually get through. Okay. But he goes down to the well to get some water and sees this attractive-looking woman. He goes home. He's like, "That's gonna be my wife." And they're like, "The Philistine people are enslaving us. What are you doing?" And it's almost like it's in parentheses, but God was using this to further His glory. To further His story. And I could see this being part of that maybe Jacob was intentionally supposed to have the blessing anyway, and so God's, using this. I don't know. But it's another situation where this main character in God's story, instead of realizing that they're a main character in God's story because they've heard that promise, just sees what they see and says, it's not enough, I'm going to step in and play God for a minute. And I don't think that that's a thing that needs any sort of gender description. I think that's just really consistent through the Bible.
And today, right? I mean, doesn't that drive that home? You said that super well. That the one piece we didn't necessarily read of these is that both of these women so far, Sarah and Rebecca, had heard God's promise in a particular way and hadn't seen it happen yet. They'd waited on it. They hadn't seen it happen. So what do? They step in and say, all right, well, we're going to make this happen. And I have never done that.
No, absolutely not. None of us ever.
Right? I mean, we all would.
So
We all 100%. Especially we get like they get clear word from God on this. Undeniable. This is God, clear promise, boom. Where is it?
And I mean, I think it'd be really easy, again, with a more modern perspective, to be like, yeah, they stepped up.
Yes.
Yeah, they took it into their own hands and they made stuff happen. But then if we look at it from that faith perspective, it's like, yeah, God made it happen for you despite you getting involved when you didn't need to. And that's a hard one.
It is. Well, and that really was the kind of the final question. Maybe we'll go to that, and we can talk about other stuff too.
Oh, spoilers.
For me,
I knew that.
I think it's so interesting to have the conversation. Would this have happened if they hadn't done what they'd done? Because again, God says, "Hey, the blessing's going to come to Jacob." So would Isaac have done something different? Would Esau have shown up and Isaac suddenly would have been heard from God and said, nope, this is wrong, you're supposed to bless the other son? Right. Is there some other way? Or is this the only way that it happens if Rebecca actually does this amount of trickery in order for it to happen?
And that, I think there's an earlier part in the story where Esau actually gives his inheritance to Jacob.
Yeah, there's kind of two separate things what the inheritance and blessing are, and he gives it away for a bowl of soup.
Yeah, it was it was a story that just kind of highlights the foolishness of men when they're hungry, I guess. Esau was he was out hunting. Correct me if I'm wrong. Esau was out hunting. He came back. He's just completely famished. Yep. And Jacob's stirring a pot of soup. I have no idea why Jacob's cooking, but he's cooking. And he's like, I'm not going to make it. You got to give me soup. And Jacob's like, maybe if you trade your inheritance, I'll give you a bowl of soup. And he's like, what good am I going to do with my inheritance if I die of hunger? Yes, done. And so he gives him a bowl of soup. And so I have heard that maybe this is just God saying, hey, you tricked yourself out of your inheritance. This is what you get. And that maybe God was using the mom to make this happen. Right. so that it wasn't, God can use anyone. And here God saying that, the woman of the family needs to be the one to step up to make God's will happen. Because Esau, you lost out and you traded your inheritance for a bowl of soup. You couldn't have got up and made your own soup. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that I've heard that before, that it wasn't so much that she was tricking Isaac, who's supposed to be the head of the family, but that it was God's will being carried out because Esau had already, I don't know.
Yeah. So then does that make Rebecca less frustrating as a person? Does that, now is she just essentially being manipulated by God?
Ooh.
This gets into the whole, there's a path and God's controlling us all along the way versus how much of that is our free will. And then I think, as you said earlier, God works with what our mistakes and our flaws and makes stuff happen out of it.
Or we could talk about favoritism in families and how if you're the hairier one, that's a bummer.
I know.
Moms like you less if you're hairy.
I guess.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Such a weird. Can you imagine Thanksgiving dinner after this, right? You got Esau and Jacob and Mom staring at each other.
And then she's just doing the fork tapping on the, I'm so glad we're together for Thanksgiving.
I know. If only Jacob hadn't run away. Yeah.
You mentioned something earlier, and it made me, okay. But I am going to bring up the story of Tamar.
Yes.
Because
So for those of you, that's Genesis chapter 38. If you want to look at it, it's a very long story.
And there's a lot of stuff we could pick apart your way through the Old Testament because you think it's going to be crusty, old, and boring. This is like Days of Our Lives, General Hospital. It's all rolled into one. This is some fascinating stuff, and it's part of our history, which that makes it even more relevant. Okay, Tamar's story. Let me try and. Okay, so 12 sons of Jacob. He gets married, has some kids. He's got 3 sons. His sons need a wife. He finds a wife. Tamar is going to be their wife. She marries his oldest, and that doesn't work out. And it's way better than this. You should read it. And then marries the second, and then he dies too. And Judah's like, whoa, my sons are dropping like flies. This woman needs to move back home because he still has his youngest son left. And that's supposed to carry on his name. But their law says that Tamar, because she hasn't born a son, needs to marry this last one to carry on sons. To bear sons for the other 2 sons. Yeah, it's a thing about making boys. Yep. And he doesn't, and he casts Tamar aside. And Tamar is kind of like, what's the best word? Screwed by the system.
Yeah.
What's a better phrase for that? I don't know.
Pretty accurate.
More church-appropriate term. She was screwed by the system. Okay. And she goes and moves back home, and she's casted out. And I just love this story so much. What she ends up doing is she confronts, hey, this is what's supposed to happen. And Judah's like, no. And she gets her sister's temple priestess robes.
She tricks Judah into sleeping with her by pretending to be
a temple prostitute.
Yeah, temple prostitute. And then, gets pregnant finally and has a son. And Judah flips out because Judah actually is technically responsible for her still. And so he thinks she's been sleeping around.
Right.
Dun, dun, dun.
But it turns out that in her craft, gathered 2 points of Judah. It was like his staff and his family crest or something. Yep. Which, that's a funny story about how a man would just give up his staff and his family crest just to, okay. Yeah. So, and then everyone's like, whoa. And this is part of Jesus' lineage. Yep. And because she rose up and figured out a way to get what was hers, I guess. She's playing by the law, the Hebrew law.
She follows the law more than
any of the men in that family did. Yeah. So even though that story's a little gritty for the Bible version, I guess, for Sunday morning, I would say. Yeah. That one's one of my favorites because that's definitely someone rising up way beyond their station, playing by the rules. And I just love it that's kind of like the start of Jesus' lineage.
Yeah, when we get to Matthew chapter 1 and they do the genealogy story leading up,
And her name is in
and
there.
her name is there,
I love
specifically Judah and Tamar. It's a fascinating little thing. You said it. When we look at the women of Genesis in particular, I'm trying not to use this word lightly. They are tricksters. They are deceivers throughout much of this in a cultural context where that was a positive thing.
Absolutely.
And when I say that now, I think we hear that and we can hear it as negative and all those things like that. But again, I'm trying to look at it from this cultural context. I would name them as tricksters and deceivers as much as any of the best, and that's what they're good at. That's what
Right.
why
I mean,
they're-
we've got loads of stories. You know, David, when he goes off to the foreign land and has to pretend that he's crazy and gets like spittle in his beard, you know, so he cowered his way out of it.
Jacob tricks Laban, a number of times.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. So we see all this stuff coming.
So it's not like something that we would view through a Catholic church lens, where we would say like, oh, women are just seductresses, they work in low base ways. No, in this context, that's to be celebrated.
Yeah, it really is. So, yeah, I guess last question, because we do have to wrap up. How do we feel about the women out of these stories? How do we feel about them?
It's a good question for everyone here, I guess.
I'd
Anybody want to throw any thoughts?
conflicted.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah, I want to say like, oh, what?
Impressed?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, yeah. You said it. I'll say this. I'll speak for this. The men in these stories are morons and just fools.
Thank you.
And awful. I mean, they're awful. They're awful. And yeah, when you compare that in general to the women's actions, I mean, it's really quite stunning. And
Oh,
yet,
absolutely.
at the end of it, it accomplishes God's will.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, God making his way out of it. Thank you. Yes, yeah.
I disagree with it. I mean, with the situation, I think we are all capable of doing those things.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're human beings.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think he was hungry. He's like, I need some food. Just feed me. Like, he wasn't expecting the person who was going to give him food to actually take. And Eric's like, oh,
Sure, sure.
I think that we're all capable of these things. Wanting a child, and
Mm-hmm.
she's like, well, like, who knows what all the rest of the details of it are? But I think every single one of us are capable of doing these things.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that, Sean. That we're all capable of doing these things. And I think the reality is most of us have too. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Good stuff.
That's a good way to look at that. Like, we're all doing the best with the perspective that we have and the tools that we have.
Yeah.
And
That's a good way.
God says, yeah, well, I have all of the perspective and all of the tools.
Yeah.
I'm going to help you through this. My glory is going to be shown through this regardless.
That's a good way of putting it. Good way to end. Cool. Let's pray. God, again, thank you. Yeah, for meeting us as real people with all that we do, with all of our limited ideas and perspectives, and yet that's exactly it. Yeah, you come into that and see beyond what we can see and have a different view than what we've got, and we're just really, really thankful for that. I'm thankful for the real stories that we get that remind us we're part of something that's not a fairy tale. It's not made up. It's the real creator of the universe, really connecting to people like all of us here, and that's just a gift to remember on this day. In your name we pray. Amen. Thank you, Kayla.
Yeah, thank you.
You know what I hear at the out of the words at the end of that is like, whatever chaos is in the story, whatever chaos is in your story, that the will of the Lord comes through no matter what. So what I hear out of that is, I think our worry is getting in the way. Like the worry of, am I doing the right thing? Did I make the right choice? So, even if it was just for the next 3.5 minutes, what if you set that worry aside and we're right here in this moment and nowhere else? There's a grace when the heart is under fire, another way when the walls are closing in. When I look at the space between where I used to be and this reckoning, I know I would never be alone. There was another in the fire standing next to me. There was another in the waters holding back the seas. Should I ever need reminding of how I've been set free, there is a cross that bears the burden where another died for me. There is another in the fire. All my dead left for dead beneath the waters. I'm no longer a slave to my sin anymore. And should I fall in the space between what remains of me and this reckoning, oh, either way I will bow to the things of this world. I know I will never be alone. There'll be another in the fire standing next to me. There is another in the waters holding back the sea. Should I ever need reminding what power set me free? There is a grave that holds nobody. That power lives in me. There'll be another in the fire. Oh, there'll be another in the fire. Oh, there is another in the fire. Oh, there is another in the fire. I can see the light. I can see the light in the darkness as the darkness bows to him. I can hear the roar in the heavens as the space between wears thin. I can feel the ground shake beneath us as the prison walls cave in. Nothing stands between us. Nothing stands between us. There is no other name but the name that is Jesus. He who was and still is and will be through it all. So come what may in the space between all the things unseen and this reckoning. Oh, I know I will never be alone. Will you stand and sing with us? I know I will never be alone. There'll be another in the fire, standing next to me. There'll be another in the waters, holding back the seas. Should I ever need reminding how good you've been to me, I'll count the joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you. Let's sing, I'll see the light. I can see the light in the darkness as the darkness bows to him. I can hear the roar in the heavens as the space between west and I can feel the ground shake beneath us as the prison walls gave in. Nothing stands between us. Nothing stands between us. Count the joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. I'll count the joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. I'll count the joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. I'll count the joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be.
Amen. Amen. Go ahead and find your seats if you would. Perfect. Perfect. We know not everyone here or watching today is a Christian. We think that's great. There should be a place to come, ask questions, try and figure all this Jesus stuff out. That's why we do what we do. As part of that, that's why we center together here on the story of Jesus. We think that's important to do. And that's why we want you to be in a place where you can talk and ask questions and try and figure all this Jesus stuff out. So, my friend Linda is going to talk to you a little bit about that and why that is such a great thing.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's all good. And actually, I'm going to announce now for you watching on the live stream. Apparently, we were having some issues with that, so we're just going to keep this one going and not do a new live stream for the congregational meeting. So don't switch off this one, but you won't have to because it'll just keep going. So if you're watching there, want to warn you about that. Hi, Linda.
Hi, how are you?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm good.
Excellent.
So, one of the things. do you want me to just?
No, go for it. You got this.
So one of the things that we found out when we did the surveys months back is that we wanted to do more with connecting with each other, getting to know each other better. And so since I've been coming to Hope, or even at the middle school 9 years ago or so, one of the things we did was small groups. And I remember my very first small group. I was petrified. I thought, what am I doing going to a small group? I know nothing about the Bible. I know nothing about Jesus, God, just a little bit, because I have gone to church my whole life, but I've never really dug in. And so I joined a group. I loved the group. They didn't make me feel like I didn't know anything. They made me feel like I belonged. I could ask questions. It was a fun group. So I have joined small groups every year since, and I absolutely love them. We've hosted groups at our house. I drug my husband in the same way. He was nervous about going as well, and he has joined now, and he loves them as well. But one of the things we did when we did the surveys months ago was to find out what we wanted to do, and people wanted to connect even more. And so instead of just doing 2 small groups a year, we're doing quite a few things now. There's a Tuesday morning Bible study. If people just want to do a Bible study.
10:30, yeah, a more quote-unquote traditional Bible study,
Yes.
but it's a ton of fun for that group that shows up, and that's here at church, yep.
Okay, and that's led by you, correct?
It is not.
Oh,
It's actually led by a retired pastor in our community,
Oh,
Pastor
okay.
Willis, yeah.
Cool.
I go in every now and then, but it's fun for me to not be in charge, actually.
Good.
It's
So if
fun.
that's of interest, feel free to join that. One of the other things that's happening, I think it's an every other Tuesday with Chris and Margot Jacks every Tuesday on Zoom. You can join in. I think they're studying the book of Acts. If you want to do that, that's available. On every other Wednesday night, we're at Janice's house, and I'm part of this group. And we're doing some different things. We're talking about some different things. Last week or 2 weeks ago, we did a study from Letters from a Skeptic, and it's a dad and his son. Dad's a non-believer, son's a believer, and they have a very wonderful time chatting back and forth about why dad is a skeptic and the son is why he believes. And so it was very interesting to talk about that. That's every other Wednesday night. On Thursdays, you can join a Thursday group. We do every other Thursday, we do something called Brews and More at large in Everett. You can come have a beer if you want to. If you don't drink beer, come and have a glass of water. And we usually just talk about just anything. We'll pick a question. Last week was, what do the 10 of us that are sitting here have in common? That was our discussion for the night. So just all sorts of different topics. Some are
Tim
focused-
kept trying to hijack that by saying, we're all wearing clothes, and we're like,
Yeah.
come on, Tim.
Some are more focused
Some
on the
a
Bible. Some are
little
more
more
just,
deeper,
Yeah,
yeah.
some are just chatting and conversation, and it's a good time. So that's an every other Thursday if you're interested in that. On Friday mornings at 7 o'clock, we're just finishing up our yearly Bible study with Pastor Dave, and there's a group of us that we went through the New Testament this year. I'd never done that before. I thought, oh, here's another one of those times when I'm going to look like I really don't know much. And boy, I'll tell you, I have learned so much this year in this doing this. It's
Very good.
really
And that's
good.
on Zoom as well, that
And
Friday
that's on
morning.
Zoom
yeah.
Friday. And that, get a hold of one of us. It's a great thing. We did golf this year
Yeah.
on the other Thursday night. There was a group that pretty much did it every week. I couldn't make it happen every week, but I got to do it a couple times, and it was just a lot of fun. So we are trying to get people together. Come join us. It's fun. It's not something where, if you're new to the Bible and you want to come and join a group of people who are fun to study with and learn from, it's great. And so please come join us. If you want to get together with someone, get a hold of one of us. Katie.
What if you have not joined any groups yet?
Good.
Is there an attendance, or do you have to come where they start at the beginning, or do you come anytime?
Well, I'm
There
glad
is.
you brought that up.
Good, yeah. There's a quiz in order to join the group. Yeah.
No, so I know for our every other Wednesday night group, anybody's welcome. If you want to join now, this will be our third one this Wednesday night. And we would love to have you. One of the other things that we talked about when we were kind of talking about the letters from a skeptic was if someone wanted to come that's a non-believer, we'd love to come have you talk to us about why you don't believe and maybe have some conversations around that as well. Feel free to join now. There's nothing that's a start and finish except for the Friday morning Bible study. We're
Yeah.
going to have a break between Thanksgiving and the New Year when we start the Old Testament.
Yeah, that's really the only one. And even that one you can join at any time.
Yes.
But that one's going to go on a brief hiatus so that it will relaunch here in January. And then your group is wrapping up here pretty soon as well?
4 more weeks or 2 more weeks. We'll be done before Christmas.
But come in anytime.
Yeah.
We're looking at certain,
Yeah, we're reading chunks of Acts in sections. So if you want to just test something out for a couple weeks, we'll be wrapping up before Christmas, so we'd love anybody to join.
And also, I would like to highlight that I've noticed in most of these groups, and you probably want to tell the online folks
Yeah.
something about this, but that if you don't do your reading or like you're stressed about that, knowing like, oh, I'm so busy, I might not always get my reading done, it's still valuable to come and have the conversation. So don't ditch. It's not
Thank
like
you for saying that.
assignment and you can't go to class. Just throwing that out for people.
So for those of you that are online, Margot and Chris were just saying if you want to join their group on Tuesdays, certainly you can join anytime. if you haven't done the reading every week like you're supposed to, you don't need to come in feeling like, oh, I can't go this week because I didn't do my reading. For any of these groups, you still come in, you still learn, you still listen. It's great. It's not a very great group of people, non-judgmental. And if you can't make it a week or 2 or 3, it's okay. Nobody's going to be like, oh, they're not into this, you know. No, it's not like that. So come and join us.
That's perfect. Thank you very much. All right. It is a busy morning. We're going to get a chance to stand, get some coffee and a donut or something as well. And then we'll move on into our informational meeting, try and answer some questions about what's coming up next. We'll do that here. And again, if you're watching online, just stay on this. Mark is going to come up and sing some karaoke to entertain you while that. Thank you, Mark. That'll be really fun. While we're waiting for that, as we do wrap up, you'll hear more about this. December 11th, there's going to be an opportunity to meet some of our friends over at Holy Cross. We're going to talk about a lot of that here in this next hour, but I'd love for you to have that on your calendar. December 11th at 2 p.m., we're going to do a little Advent workshop, cards, crafts, and cookies. We'll have a chance to do that together. I think that's going to be a lot of fun, so we'll share more about that. That'll be coming up here soon. All right. Thank you again for financially supporting Hope. We are blessed by that. That allows us to do this ministry that we feel called to do. We're thankful that you continue to give online. You can give in person as well. If you've got those cards filled out, want to turn those in person, we appreciate that also. We'll conclude worship and then just come right back in here in a minute or two and start our informational meeting. So, from a worship side, we close that with the words that we've been saying literally for 10, 11 years now. Don't just go to church. Be the church. Amen. I was already planning on being gone this particular weekend, so where she and I would normally kind of co-lead this, I'm going to mostly lead this, but there are other leadership team people here that can jump in at any time, and I'd encourage them to do so. If we get to a point of asking questions, we'd love it if you would actually say those in a mic so that they are recorded for later on. That'd be great. And if we hear anything that we feel like needs to be repeated, I will try and repeat that as well so that we make sure we get all of that. All right, here, let's open with a word of prayer. Let's do that. God, thank you again so much just for this opportunity to be able to think and dream and vision about what's coming next for us as a church. Thanks for walking with us for so many years now. Thanks for always just calling us to continue to find ways to share the good news of your Son, Jesus, with people around us. We just pray that we might discern what's the best way for us to do that here in this next stage of ministry. In your name we pray. Amen. All right. Excellent. So from an agenda standpoint, we're going to go through a couple of things, and maybe at the end of each one of those blocks, we can take some questions as well. But first off, I just want to be real clear on process, because this is all new to, quite honestly, it's new to all of us, and so this is something that, as leadership team, we've talked about. We actually do have a lawyer that we connect with on certain things where we want to make sure that we are being a legal congregation, legal entity, and so we've got feedback on that as well. And so this is what we want you to know is coming up for us as a church community. There will be a vote to leave the Evangelical Covenant Church, but that is a vote that happens by all Hope partners. We call members here partners. If you're unsure if you are a partner, we can have that conversation. We actually have a pretty simple partnership covenant that we ask people to sign on. If you've been here for a while, you probably have done that, although through COVID that got a little goofy, we know. So if you're unsure about that, if you're watching online, whether or not you are a voting partner, we can have that conversation and do that before any legal votes come up. But that will happen here sometime in the near future. Today is not that day. Also, a vote to sell is a vote that the full partnership votes on as well. So none of those decisions are made just by the leadership team, certainly not just by me. That's something that we all do together. After doing both those things, assuming that they pass, and again, that's the church's decision, a vote to merge would then also be a full vote by Hope partners. So there's a number of different things that we as partners vote on. They rarely happen. It's possible that all three of them will happen in about a month or two of time frame. That's just a pretty uncommon occurrence. But all those things are things that we would all do. But it would happen probably in those order as well. That we would end up having a vote on leaving the ECC, that we'll have a vote on selling. And again, assuming all those things have happened, then we would have a vote on merging. So all that's coming up. So these meetings that we're doing have been an opportunity to share kind of what we know. Things can change. Things already have changed. There are churches that try to operate differently, where they want to make sure they have all the information and only present that at the very end. We actually, as a congregation, haven't operated that way. One of our core values is honesty, and we feel we'd rather just, while we're in the process, if things change, is able to kind of roll along with that. And that has worked well for us in our past, so we're going to continue to do that. Just be upfront about that. There's one wrinkle in that we'll get to here in just a little bit. But by and large, we really hope that people just, see this as what it is, an opportunity to share as much information. And many of you I've had a chance to visit with now one-to-one, and that's been really, really beneficial. I've been saying, actually, I met some folks this last week, and I was saying, I need to now circle back to all those people that I was first meeting with, because so much more information now is here that I've got to do it again, and then I'm going to have to do it again. and then I'm going to retire. They've been really, really fun. I've enjoyed all those conversations. I really, really have. But again, as we get new information, I just try to be as upfront as I can about what that is. And so actually, this is a chance for that. There are people that I talked to 4 or 5 weeks ago. We have a lot more information now, and we just want to try and get that to you. This doesn't lead to votes today. That's not something we're going to call for, but it is hopefully going to allow us to have an informed vote here, probably in the near future. So, any questions just on process, how all that plays out? Yes.
My question is on the
Yep. Thank you.
My question on the process is on voting. So, how many partners do we have, and is it a majority of every registered partner? And I guess I'm just wondering, like, if you have partners that have left but haven't officially left the partnership, how that works.
For a vote to be legal, it is the voting members present at that decide. So say, again, I'm going to make up some numbers. Say we have 500 partners and only 50 are there. Could you still have a legal vote? Yes, because it's the 50 that are there and voting, and it's the majority of those that are present. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
And is there a number of how many partners we
There
have?
is. I've got a book that has all that tracked, so I haven't counted it lately. But yeah, everyone that signed that partnership form, we have that. Yep. Good questions. Thank you. All right. Move on from process. Cool. So let's talk about this next step. We have been talking about trying to find the next step for us as a church. Within conversations on a variety of different things, we landed on probably 2 realistic options, and then one, as we talked about it, much less realistic. And that was finding somehow a way to stay here, take this building down, build a new structure, and become essentially a ministry center, not necessarily a worshiping community. The logistics for that, both financial and everything else, was not something we thought that we could pull off. And quite honestly, it's not what we thought we were necessarily called to do. We still think that primarily we want to be a worship community and then continue to expand out from that. So in order for that to happen, we have tried to find a place where we might be able to do that. There are options with that. As we sell, of course, we could just find our own piece of land, build our own building from scratch. But an opportunity came up. We've talked about this, again, in a couple of different settings. Now's a challenging time for a lot of churches. To be blunt, there are a lot of churches that don't have pastors. There are a lot of churches that have gotten pretty small and are going to close. And so it's an opportunity to have conversations with some of those churches and see if there might be a partnership there to move forward. We have found one that, again, we think we're at the likely stage of things. We are more than likely going to present this for a vote here in the very near future. And we want to talk about that so that you have as much information about that. We can answer any questions about that. Our likely church partner, and then that would become a merger as well, is with Holy Cross Lutheran Church in Lake Stevens. So we've got a map of that for those of you that may not be familiar. And the church building is that big as well. It is nearly the same size as the lake. So if you're familiar with Lake Stevens and how you get there, you go across the trestle, and then it splits 3 ways. You can go left towards the Safeway Frontier Village. You can go right as if you're continuing to Snohomish. You can go up the hill on 20th Street as if you're going to Caballero Mid-High. If you keep on going, there is a brand new Costco that is going to open next week. Everyone in Lake Stevens is excited about the Costco gas. I don't know about the rest of the Costco, but that at least, very, very excited. And kitty corner from that is where Holy Cross Lutheran is. So it's at Highway 9 and 20th Street. That church has been there for a while, 30, 40 years, and that's where that is. Thanks. Go back. So who they are now a very small congregation. They're about 20-ish members. They're looking for a revitalization partner to continue their ministry in Lake Stevens and beyond. For the last 6 months, maybe even a little longer, they have been having an internal conversation about what is next for them. They do not have a full-time pastor. That changed for them I actually knew their pastor who'd been there for quite a long time, and then they brought in a new pastor. That pastor left pretty shortly into COVID, and so they've been without a full-time pastor since. They have been just talking as a community, what's next for them? They got to a very similar conversation of recognizing, well, we really only have two options. Our options are to close and give the land away and hope that it might be used for something that we would be excited about, or find someone that would like to merge and partner with us. So as part of that, we ended up in conversation with them. I ended up in conversation with some of their leadership. Our leadership teams got together, had a little bit more conversation, and again, we're at this point now where I think this is likely going to happen, not all said and done yet. What we would recommend out of this and why we think that this is an option, and I'll just give these things and then we can talk a little bit. So first off, most importantly, shared vision for reaching people with the Jesus-centered message of good news. I mean, that's it. If they're not interested in doing that, if that's not their primary reason, then all the other reasons don't matter. I mean, that's it. And that's the thing. To be blunt, actually, when we joined here, it was the same type of thing. When we talked to the people that were here, they wanted to continue to find ways to reach people for Jesus. That was it. That's what got us excited about this. That's what has gotten our leadership teams excited about conversations with them. There's only about 20 or so folks, and they could just close, and they could do something cool with that land and do something from an ongoing standpoint from that. But they still think there are people in that community that need to know Jesus, and they'd rather do that. They want to make that happen. So that's the primary thing. Shared roots in the Reformation and the Lutheran theology of grace. So for those of us that have spent time within the Covenant Church is a branch of the Swedish Lutheran Church, and then took in some really cool expressions from the Pietist movement and the Moravians as well. But all this comes back to the Great Reformation and Martin Luther and from that. So this is an ELCA church, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. It is the largest Lutheran denomination still in America. It's about 4.5 million members, 9,000 churches in round numbers. So it's a significantly larger denomination than the Covenant Church. There are quite literally 100 different Lutheran denominations just in America alone. I grew up Lutheran, so I speak Lutheran. So I can tell you all about it, how the ELCA is a merger of the LCA and the ALC and the AELC when they got to, I can do all that. So I tell you this truly, right? Lutherans are really, really good at splitting. They love to argue. They love to get to those fine points and say, yes, but we disagree on this, and therefore we shall go away from you and be Lutherans. It's why you can go to Minnesota, and there can be 4 different Lutheran churches on 4 different corners. Having said all that, when we get out of our own way, we'll all admit the same thing. We have a theology of grace. That is what we really bring to the table. That was the joy of the Reformation. That it wasn't about buying your way into heaven. It wasn't about somehow having an intermediary between you and Jesus. No, it's you with Jesus, having a relationship, understanding that we are saved by grace. That's it. So, for the covenant, for us, I think there's a natural root there that makes a lot of sense. Some logistics. They are a smaller building than us. They have a little bit of debt. I can't remember, it's 50,000 maybe. But they have 3.2 buildable acres that is flat and kind of ready to build. So, if you think about our space here, the way that I've tried to describe it, it's not quite about the same, but our space here and out there, the narthex space, and then the office wings, and maybe a little bit more, it's about that amount of same space, so a little bit smaller, okay? However, where we are 1.6, 1.8 acres, and we're kind of built out and can't actually be able to do any of that, they have 3.2 buildable acres to where when we figure out what we want to do, and we'll talk about what that is, we could build there on that land. So that's from that. Again, last logistical notes. They currently don't have a pastor, so People have wondered about that, so they would invite me to become the pastor there. We would eventually merge, but we would do 2 worship styles. We do 2 worship services. We would continue their 8:30 service that they have, that is a more traditional style, hymn-based, led by piano, in more of a liturgical format. And then we would probably move this worship service to 10:30 instead of 10. And we would do essentially the exact same style that we are currently doing now. I don't know that we would change much of anything. Some of the building space changes a couple of different things in terms of how we might do setup and stuff, but otherwise that's kind of it. So those were the logistical things about that specifically that I think we'll pause and answer any questions that we might have on that before we might move on to other things. Yes, Marge.
My question is, having grown up and being raised in a Lutheran church, and you have too, will the Lutheran church accept a Reformed Lutheran who is now covenant, sort of, accept you going back and forth?
That is a good question, Marge. I do. Yeah, I could joke, but the short answer to that is yes. I'm already actually in conversation with them. They, when I left the Lutheran Church, I didn't leave on bad terms and anger. We left because we had a cool opportunity to plant a church within the covenant. In fact, one of my bosses, the assistant to the bishop, Jan Leistokow, she was a good friend, and the opportunity to plant Hope came, and I went to her and I said, Jan, should I do this? And she said, yes, 100%. I'd love for you to do this. We just don't have any money. So yeah, go for it. So now coming back, yeah, that it's been a smooth conversation so far, and yeah, will continue to be so. Good question. So the question is, as members, as partners, kind of where would your partnership land? I don't know from the covenant side if you can maintain a covenant membership. I think you probably could, even if you weren't at a particular covenant church. But we, as a church community, will no longer be considered part of the covenant church. That will happen. Well, again, assuming that vote does happen. So we, as a church, would eventually become a quote-unquote ELCA church, and then would be members within that denomination. For people that would choose not to join Hope either as a partner and would like to maintain their covenant membership in some other way, I think that's possible. That's a good conversation I can have with Greg Yee, who's my supervisor here in the covenant. Yes, right here first. Joe's got the mic, so you got to wait.
Sorry, Margot. To piggyback on what Marge brought up, I am a little bit reticent about being a member of a denomination, because I was raised with a faith that I have walked away from because of some of the precepts that were man-made, man-given.
Yeah.
I'm all about, respecting and following God's precepts. But when man then adds on to that, I'm a little reticent of that.
Yeah.
So question is it at all, is there any interest, I'm just going to throw this out there, of possibly becoming non-denominational? You said you're going to have 2 services, one the more traditional, and then one that... Now, since there's an issue with the ECC denomination, I'm a little suspect that down the road there might be another issue with another denomination, such as the Lutheran. And so my question is, Would it be reasonable to consider going non-denominational?
Good question, Joe. Yeah, for those of you that, again, maybe didn't grow up in the church or only grew up in one specific denomination, yeah, there are, again, as much as there are currently over 100 Lutheran denominations, there are over 35,000 different denominations worldwide within the Christian church. Can you believe that? 35,000 different Christian denominations worldwide. I just heard that, and I trust the person I heard that from. So yeah, there's always a different denomination, and there's always a problem with whatever denomination you have to be a part of. So a number of churches, particularly in America, have become non-denominational. That is certainly a conversation we could have. I'll just answer kind of two pieces of that. One, in order for this particular partnership to work, it would need to be Lutheran. It would need to be ELCA. It would need to, for this one, it is something that needs to happen. Just to back that up, for those of you that might have grown up in a more hierarchical denomination where it's top down and they tell you how you need to do things, that is not how the ELCA operates. The ELCA operates as congregationally based. So we as an individual congregation, we get to choose what we do. We make our decisions. No one from national gets to come in and kind of tell us how to do things. So from that standpoint, it fits kind of who we are. And just individually, and I've joked about this, how like the church bill would be really fun, but I prefer to be individual. I prefer to be part of something broader than myself. I like the accountability. I like the camaraderie. I like that. So although we can certainly have that conversation, I would just be honest and say that individually, I would steer us away from that as the pastor, and whether or not then that led to wherever it would. Yeah. Back over here.
Okay, so we have an online question. What are their challenges other than low numbers?
Good question. Honestly, their biggest challenge is getting into their parking lot. We can talk about that. I don't know that I would. And do they have challenges with homelessness and that? Okay, really, really good questions. The homeless population within Lake Stevens is certainly much smaller than in Everett. And again, I'll circle back. That hasn't typically been our biggest challenge here. Just to name it, because I've said this in individual meetings, it usually isn't the homeless folks that have been our problem. It's been the pimps and the drug dealers. That's who we have in our parking lot. That's who I end up confronting throughout the week. And I'm not built for that, just to be honest. I'm really not. It's pretty. We've had some really scary situations. There are some homeless folks over in Lake Stevens. One of the cool things that Lake Stevens is finally starting to recognize is that there are some homeless folks over in Lake Stevens, and we need to start doing something about that. So my understanding is that occasionally there are some folks that are in that area because of where it happens to be Highway 9 and 20th. And if that is the case, then that's, a reality for that space. Is it constant? Is it like what we've got going on here? And is it the threatening people that we've got here? No. That's my understanding is no. In terms of other challenges from that, really it is just so to name their area, if you've ever been over there, it's kind of one of those things. If you see it as a problem, it's a problem. In order to get into their parking lot, it's easiest if you're going from east to west on 20th Street. That's the easiest way to go on in there because it is a limited access area based on Highway 9. I actually talked to Washington DOT about how all that's designed and how they want you to get in. And Washington DOT is very clear that there's not going to be any further access into that. That the only way to get in there is either doing that, or if you're coming, say, this way from Everett and heading in, you now go just slightly past the church. You turn left into what is now a new neighborhood, left in that neighborhood, and then you go into church from there. So it's kind of one of those things, people are like, oh, it's going to be really, really hard to get there. I got to be honest with you. I understand that. I appreciate that that's real. If you've ever been to Life Point Church in Lake Stevens, it is so far out of the way and off all these weird and random roads. And people go there. It's the largest church in Lake Stevens. If you've ever been to Snohomish Community Church, it's so far out of the way and off all these random roads, and people go there. It's the second biggest church in Lake Stevens. I appreciate that it might be challenging to find the street to go left in order to get into the parking lot. I do. I don't want to dismiss that. But if that's going to be the reason why we say, let's not go there, we got to think bigger than that, right? And also, honestly, those are big churches. I don't even want us to be a big church, right? It's not like we're going to have a stream of 1,000 cars driving through this neighborhood. If we do, we're going to have to sell that land to be the new Costco. As they go. Yes. Back here first.
I have the mic. So, gosh, I'm loud. So first off, I'll say I am really excited by my lack of commute that I'll have. So just as a personal side note. Yeah. No, my question is, so I know we've been talking a ton about impact around here and how we can impact communities. Yes. So I'm kind of curious, like, what are those 20 folks doing? Like, are they impacting the Lake Stevens community? How? And, you know, how does that kind of align with what we've been talking about?
That's a great question. Thank you, Tim. Yes. So, yeah, they've gotten pretty small. They've been trying to figure that out. They have rented out their space. They have opened up their space to a number of different groups, and so they've been able to do that, much like we have done that here. And so that's been really cool. One of the things that they house now is actually the coat project that is done in Lake Stevens, where people have just donated a bunch of coats. That's all kept and curated there. And then if anybody in Lake Stevens ever needs a coat, you can just go and get one. That's a really, really cool thing that has happened there. So that is also happening. And then this gets to, again, this, we struggle a little bit with how much of this to kind of go on because it can lead to so many different rabbit trails. They just recently started a partnership with Volunteers of America that now has an office on their site as part of their place right there. And that has become a really cool partnership for them because VOA is able to do a number of things now from there that, quite honestly, used to be done over here. One of the biggest frustrations that Everett has, from a leadership team standpoint, is that much of Snohomish County says, hey, fix all of the problems that are going on in Snohomish County, but do it there. Do it in Everett. You know, there's problems in Lake Stevens, in Marysville, and Snohomish, all over. And we don't, you know, those of us who live in Lake Stevens, yeah, but don't actually, you know, try and fix them here. So this church has said, no, we're going to house this here. We're going to serve the people that are here. We're going to start doing this here. And they love that. And on their list of non-negotiables, and that's a pretty short list so far, that's pretty close to one. Like, they get it. They're like, because they've heard from us that we're really excited about that. But, you know, how it might work in space and building and all blah, 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 blah. Like, they get that might change a little bit, but they really want that to continue because they've seen how they've already made such a big impact in their community because of this partnership. As we talk about what might happen next, and we'll get to that, when we talk about that, much like we talk now at church about center, connect, impact, when I think about what we might be as a worshiping community over there, I'm thinking about three different things as well. There will be the worshiping community. There will be what might be a business venture for us that helps fund some of those things. And then there's going to be Hope Community Impact, where we do things like that, where we have offices for VOA, where we have partnerships with other things, and we do that. The reality of that is there's a couple of models for this right now. There's money for that. There's grant money for that. There's ways to be able to fund all that if it's not run by the church. Because if it's run by the church, then it's a religious organization, and you can't apply for the grant, and you can't do this and that. I've got a friend who's now I think his budget this next year is for a program that's about $600,000, and then almost all of it is being done by government money and grant money and things like that. And he himself is a Christian, and I think most of their team is Christians, but they're not a quote-unquote Christian organization, because if they were, they couldn't do all that stuff. I think that'd be really cool if we ended up having those conversations and figured out how we might be able to do that, and they've started that there just by having that there. But again, and you can do that when you got 3.2 acres, and you can start to expand that out. Hopefully that answers that question. Yes, right here.
Hi. So we actually lived in Lake Stevens for a good long while.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to get this in my head. Is it that brown church building on 20th?
Is it brown, Sally? Yes. So not Calvary. It's
right.
Yeah.
I mean, like.
It's
so
the
like
one that's got
coming
the
off
rock
Trestle, you
wall.
Come to the intersection to go onto Highway 9. You go past it onto continue on 20th, and then on the left, right there, is a brown church building. I was wondering if that's it.
Yes. I think we're talking about it. Yeah, same one.
Okay, yeah.
Rock
that
wall
one
and little
has a
signage
big
out.
amount of land.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I was just trying to get that in my head.
Cool. Of course. Yeah. Yeah. And if you aren't familiar with the area, it's hard to see. We're gonna go here and then there. Excellent. Good.
Yeah, I just actually wanted to, I wasn't sure if the partnership with the Community Resource Center would continue, but I did, that's a great asset there.
Yeah.
For a few more weeks, I'm part of
Yeah.
Volunteers for America. And yeah, you know, when you have someone that kind of knows how to do stuff, and if that partnership, it sounds like they want it to continue.
Yes.
Just so you know, too, the new food bank is just being built.
Just down the road.
A block.
Yeah.
Towards Everett on 20th. So
yeah.
There are some good community resources that are being built out there that will help deal with, anyhow.
Yeah. Thank you, Sally Jo. Yeah. Very good. I think we're going to go there first. Thank you, Greg. To Kristen, and then back to online. Is that what you're? Thank you.
So my question is about the two worship services. Do they have their own, not band, because you said it's piano, but their own enough people to lead their service still from the band music perspective, or is that going to put extra stress and ask a whole lot more of our worship team?
Thank you. Good question. That was one of my questions. They have a piano player that leads worship very, very well, and then it's me. So kind of that two-person group from there. So the ask is more just on me doing two service styles, and than that. How long that person, if that person ever leaves, then we'd have to figure that out. But that worship style is just a single individual kind of piano player that you're able to do it. You can expand that out. Maybe there'd be Sundays where we'd ask other folks from the team to come in for special music. But hopefully, ideally, no. Hey, look at there. Thanks, Google Maps. All right, yeah. So yes. Does that answer that?
Okay. So we have a question about how did they get down to 20 members? Was there a split at one time? And maybe while you're at that, how will this help Hope grow?
Good questions. Yeah, excellent. They got down to 20, I think, like most churches have over the last 3, 4, 5 years. They were never a large church. I don't know how deep we want to go into this. There was a time within the Lutheran churches where they were intentionally building small buildings with all the pieces of what they thought a church needed. So it was the sanctuary, it was the fellowship hall, it was a library, it was an office, it was a kids' room. And it was again, the thinking was, we're going to have a nice, cute, small church. But what they ended up doing is they built a building that immediately limited them to never be able to grow. They should have built just a big open room that would have allowed so much more. And all these churches all over America were doing it. It was, that was the recommendation. This is the way to do it, guys. So they ended up exactly with that. When we can get a little further, we can talk about kind of what that would mean for us in order to change that, how that would happen. They were never going to be a large church. And then when they've had the kind of cascading number of things that have happened over the last several years, they're just now a very small church. And how will that help us? How will we be able to grow? Well, a couple of different things. One, we think it will literally allow us to grow by being able to sell this wonderful building that we've had, use that to our advantage in order to build something that we think allows growth in terms of community impact, and in terms of business opportunities, and in terms of larger worship space. As we've talked about trying to change this building here, and again, just to be clear on this, we've done wonderful things and people have been amazing and fixed urinals and all those things like that has happened here. But we continue to bump up against the same walls that this building doesn't have sprinklers, isn't ADA accessible, electrical isn't a code. And in order to do some of those things, we end up having to do all of those things, and now we have to do a $3 million project, and our asset is the building. And we can't get a loan for that. Whereas if we sell it, now we have a round number, $2-3 million, that we can do those things. And then that also is it. If we have that $2 or $3 million and we have to buy land and build a building from scratch, we have $2 because we have spent it all on that. If we're able to find a place that has land and we're able to partner with, then we're actually able to bring the majority of our assets to build what's next, not just start up. So our thought from a growth standpoint, from that standpoint, is actually that. In terms of actually growing, I think the reality is we've continued to hear this now for just a lot of different reasons. This church has never been able to grow beyond a certain size in all of its history that it's been here. It's had ups and downs, but it has always ended up hitting at some point a ceiling. For safety reasons at this point, we continue to hear from families that aren't comfortable bringing their families and their kids into this space. And I will be honest, for speaking for Simone and myself, we don't disagree with them with the things that she and I have had to confront. So we think it allows that. And there's, I guess the last thing, and I think this is actually really important. We've always been a broader church community. We've always pulled people from Marysville and Everett and Snohomish, and I hope that would continue. I think that'd be really, really important. But within Lake Stevens itself, there are some cool churches and some really fun pastors, and they're doing some neat stuff. But the majority of the churches right now in Lake Stevens, particularly that are growing, look the same, sound the same, and reach the same people. And I don't look like that. I don't sound like that. And I think we reach different people. And I think if we're in Lake Stevens, we have the ability to reach a wider group. And I think we'll do that better there than here. All right, a number of different questions. Who's next?
Okay, sorry, I got the mic. But
there's the mic in the back. All right.
So leading off of what you said about the building, having been on the building team, I know like we investigated this space, and I feel like a lot of it comes down to like, does it have good bones?
Yes.
Could you add on to it? I think our answer eventually was no.
Yeah.
It didn't work well here. Would we have an opportunity to investigate that building to see like, you know, how feasible it is from an architecture perspective, or is your thought, and I don't know how those 20-ish people would feel if you went and knocked it down?
Yeah, good question.
Oh, I think I Greg cut me off.
Done.
Last part of the question is just, can it fully accommodate us now? So when you say smaller, like what does that look like for our current group going in there? All done.
Cool. No, those are really good questions. Let's talk through just logistically kind of what would need to happen right now. Would that building serve us right now? Does it have the bones, the structure, or do it? Yes, with some help. We would need to go in, and I've shared this now with them, and they're hearing it really well. We'd need to go in, and we'd need to do a fair amount of stuff right away. And typically when you do a merger, you're told to not do that, you know, to not change everything. And so that's why I've been sharing this with them, and they're hearing it. In order for their worship space to work, it would. But we'd need to change some stuff. We'd actually need to do a lot from a tech standpoint in order for that to happen. They have taken over a fair amount of their fellowship hall space. as storage. And so actually we need to build a structure, a 20 by 10 structure outside where we can move a lot of stuff that's going to free up their inner space. They no longer have any kids, and so they converted their nursery into a library. We're going to convert it back. Just like we're gonna do those types of things in order just to move in. And then my hope is that we do pause, then we do catch our breath, and we get to know them, and they get to know us, and we spend some time together in conversation. And then we, as a church community, really start asking, all right, now what does this community need? What's really needed here? And that, again, just to name those things, it'd be easy to say, I want to run a preschool. I've run those before. We're going to build one. But does the community need it? I like coffee. Let's build a coffee shop. But does the community really need it? I think all of those then are what gets built out from there, probably not that structure itself. We can do some things to that structure, but again, it was kind of designed as this fully enclosed type of thing. So it might not be worth it to do a whole much more to that. It would probably be easier just to figure out, all right, as we go forward, we know we want community space, we need offices for VOA and the food bank, blah, 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 and we need all that here. We do need a larger worship space, and it would probably just be easier to build that in its own separate space from there. Does that answer your question?
It answers it. I think it also raises that giant question, like, to code, will the county approve you to go put another building?
So yes, they will. I've had conversations with the city of Lake Stevens about what we can and can't do. And all the stuff we need to do in order just to move in, we can do, no permits and all that stuff needed. In terms of, is the land all buildable? Are there wetlands? It's all, yes. It is 3.2, yeah, those are all really, really important questions. And we've tried to do as much research on those as possible. But our understanding is it is 3.2 of buildable land. Actually, because the neighborhoods just got finished around it, like they've done most of the initial structure stuff too. Like we would have to add in one section of sidewalk, and there's one other thing that we'd have to do, but all the rest has actually been done because of those other things that just got finished. So yeah, all good questions. We're going here.
Yes, is there possibly a diagram of the interior of the building? Like there's a worship space, there's offices, are there classrooms, is there a social room? What is the building actually comprised of that we would have available?
Good question. There is not a diagram. It's our hope that on December 11th at 2 p.m., we're all going to go over there and do a little Advent workshop and actually get to be in the building itself. I think that would be hopefully the best way to do that. But yeah, again, it does have that. It's got a worship space. It's got a fellowship hall. It's got now one space that we'd be able to use for kids and one space that we need to flip for kids. And it does have a kitchen, which is actually really nice. And we can build, we can build 20 by 10 structures outside in order just to move some things out. And we can do that, again, without permits, just to make that happen. It is a paved parking lot. I think one section's unpaved, but the majority, right? There's one section that's unpaved, yeah. All right, yes, here.
Okay, couple of assumptions.
Cool.
How much of our bills do the rental income pay? Do you know?
Part of our budget right now is $45,000 is considered rental income.
Okay, that's good. For that, that's a yearly, I'm sure.
Yes.
All right. So, what percent do we need of the rental income to pay our bills today?
I mean, we don't pay our bills if we don't have the rental income.
Yeah, that's what I was assuming too.
Yeah.
And what my point where I'm getting to is it would be a real shame, in my mind, to sell this building for, let's just say, $2.5 million, and by the time you're done, given the 10% and all the other legal fees away for real estate, you have a nest egg of about $2 million, and then have that dwindle down over the next year or so while you're building the ministry in Lake Stevens, and come up and say, well, gee, we only have $500,000 left and we can't do anything, or less, right? So the question I have, and I'm not demanding or asking anything. I'm just saying I wish somebody would study this to say, what happens if we just keep this church until the time comes when we need the money, or it's more relevant to have the money in order to move forward? Because my assumption is it's going to take a congregation of about 150 to 200 people to pay the current salary and pay the bills. That's just an assumption, right? I don't know if it's true, but I think someone ought to do some cash flow analysis on this and kind of figure it out, because I'm guessing we're 50, 60 people, right? By the time we're done, and they're 20, so now you're up to 80 people, okay? How long is it going to take us to get to a critical mass where you can actually afford to pay all your bills without rental income? So not saying no or anything like that. I'm just saying I wish somebody would go do that cash flow study to figure this out before it becomes a real burden.
Sure. And we've done some of that. They have rental income as well. That adds up to about 25 to 30,000. So you're seeing a break of about 15 to 20 from a budgetary standpoint, just in terms of changing the rental income from here to rental income from over there. You'll see the budget that we'll get a chance to vote on is trying to take some of that into account in terms of that process. It's a worthwhile thing, and we can get to that point of deciding, all right, we'd rather just get the rental income from here and from there as opposed to just selling it. But when we talk about selling, we'll see if that's an option. Our current budget is only about $250,000. So if we have about $300,000 in savings. So if we're 20,000 short, 30,000 short, 40,000 short, we're not going to drain that $2 million in a year. I mean, it would take a significant challenge for that to actually happen. So your point is well taken, and the finance team can certainly look at all of that. But would we, suddenly no longer be able to pay our bills if we did that?
I'm not as worried about the immediate effect as I am
Yeah.
the effect a year or 2 or 3 from now.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Very good. Yes, in the back first.
Yeah, so I know that there is a big financial component to this, but I think the part where I'm becoming hesitant is when it seems like an opportunity based on economics, not necessarily just based on faith. And for me, the biggest red flag would be that you don't get to share. I'm going to go first. Thank you. For me, that big red flag comes with the fact that we're merging with the church because, we have this same idea where we want to help change the community and do Jesus stuff and all of that. But we're having 2 worship services where, let's be honest, probably most of them will be at one and most of us will be at the other one. How are we supposed to make congregational decisions if we're essentially running 2 separate churches that just happen to share a building?
That's a great question. That was really the question that all kinds of Lutheran churches and Presbyterian churches and Methodist churches really struggled with for the 80s and the 90s, early 2000s. We called it the worship wars. It was, sadly, in a number of churches, it really was that. It felt like 2 different churches. And anytime you get to a church that has 2 worship services, even if they're the same style, you can have that. If you've got 2 worship styles, it even enhances that. So your options are to just do 1 service and never grow beyond that, or you as a church need to decide that your worship service and style isn't going to be the defining point for you. You need to say as a church, you know what? It is going to be our desire to reach people in our community and make an impact for our community, and we will do that together. There are churches that are now modeling that figured out how to do that. That would be the burden on us to see if we can actually do that and make that happen. I have seen churches that have pulled that off. I think it's possible. Again, quite honestly, worship style, I don't know that it needed to be the worship war that it was. I think we made it such a big deal. And if pastors had been brave enough to challenge folks and say, hey, we're built on something bigger than that, and we're going to spend time together to make sure that we do that, I think we didn't have to waste 20 or 30 years to end up at that same conversation. Will we do it? I don't know. I think so, because I think we're self-aware enough to name it and try and lean into it. So from that standpoint, it is more of a leap of faith, because it is doing something that would be new for us. Yeah, more questions. Yes. Greg has a question.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, at the church I was at before we came to Hope, went through a similar situation where it was a Church of Christ that we merged with a First Christian church. And they started out, first service of the day was a more traditional, not a lot of instrument service. The second one was a more modern service. And what we noticed was, over the course of the months as people were getting into those, some folks that were from the modern service preferred the more traditional service and switched. Some people that were had come from the more traditional service really liked the more modern service and switched. Some people liked going 8:30, some people like going 10:30. So there was a mix of folks from the two formerly separate congregations. Kind of people adjusted to different services and times that they liked. And for there, we always made sure in between the service, if there was church business, it got taken between the two services. So people in the first service stayed late, people in the second service showed up a little early, so it never felt like a couple different congregations were meeting there, because it was intentional to make sure that any church business, we involve both services. So I think eventually it switched to both services, went more modern eventually. But for the first part, there was parts of those different services that appealed to both congregations. That was nice. It was a nice mix. So for there, at least, it turned out to be a good merger for those two groups. So I think we've got one question.
And that would be the other thing that I would say, is that we have done this, and we've done this well. We did a merger, and we did it between two different communities. We did have a similar worship style in this particular instance, but mergers usually don't work, and this one did. It gives me great hope that we can do it again, and maybe even start to model that, because a lot of other churches are going to have to start figuring that out. Yeah.
Oh, I got the microphone. I have been in that church, and the reason I was in that church was I was going to a Zumba class. And the 3 women who still attend that church are part of that 20 that you talked about. And what's occurred to me, the part of our conversation right now is, recently I've even heard from some of the people in this church about how they wished we still would sing more hymns, and sort of that real shift between the merger here and their more traditional approaches and past that they wish hadn't faded away. And as I think about this, it's like, it is a bit of a generational thing. I mean, some of us here are past 55, and we remember, did you see who was giggling? And so here we are. We did grow up in churches where more traditional hymns were sung, and we love Christmas time because very traditional music comes up at Christmas time. So it will be a transition, and it's partly a generational transition, because you said they don't have any children there. That tells me they don't have, that it's an older group of 20.
Yeah.
And so, yes, they may hang on to some more traditional services, but I think eventually that does all kind of blend together. It's like what Greg was saying, is it can come together, but you have to allow enough time for that to happen. So I like what you've suggested about 8:30 and 10:30, because it gives people options. And I could draw you a picture of the layout, Mark, if you want to know what the building looks like.
That'd work too. I want to make sure I get to some of the other stuff. What other questions have we got on this?
So I have a question about, with two separate services, will that spread you, Bill, even thinner than you already are, or is it going to be easier for you? And then one of the other questions was if there was a hybrid option, or if it was part of the conversation, like it was a requirement of any merger that we would maintain those two separate service types.
Oh, okay. Will it spread? Yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously 2 services will be more work for me. I won't do 2 different sermons or anything like that. I mean, that I told them I am kind of who I am. But every church I've ever been at before Hope, I've always done 2 services. So that doesn't concern me. Is there the option of doing 1? There is, but I think everyone would just be annoyed. Because, yeah, they really are interested in a hymn-based, piano-based type of thing. And I could try and convince them that they do this. But the more, Sarah and I have talked about this quite a bit, there are people that are reached by a liturgical, hymn-based style of worship service, especially when it's done well. And I'm not sure it's being done well very many places over there. And if we are doing that, and I think we can, again, that's part of what I think I bring to that conversation, is that if we're going to do that, we're going to do it well. It's going to be engaging. It's going to be, we're going to talk about why we do what we do. I think we're going to reach some folks that don't have a church home otherwise. And I'd rather try that than just tick everyone off. So I know, Linda, do you have something? I can repeat it.
I just really appreciate your willingness to do 2 services, because I know, just listening to Holy Cross, they love their traditional service, and I love this style, and so I was one of those thinking, man, if I had to go back to their traditional, what would that look like? So I just appreciate your willingness and Sarah's to do 2 services, because that has got to be more of a strain on you guys, and but great for us.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, just a comment about willingness to do 2. Can I talk about sale so that I can answer any of those questions? All right. So just an update on that. And again, to be clear, this comes back to all of you. So we have possible options where the building now here would be sold and be sold as is. Has been rezoned to where it can be torn down and something new can be built back up. And this is where I think I'm going to say this in general, and if you want to ask me specifically afterwards, I'll tell you, but not on camera, because there are 3 groups that have interest in this, and I'm not sure where they're at with their people about saying where they're at. So I don't want to out them from that standpoint. That's not my story to tell, but I would tell you individually, because again, it's not necessarily a secret. So yeah, we have 3 groups that have interest. One that has now said they want to make an offer. So, I think pretty formally we're going to get an offer here very soon from one, and then the other 2 are interested in that. They would all be using the building more or less as is. They have a way that they think that they can do that. So it would not be torn down. I think there's something cool about that. And again, I think I can tell you, they would be ministries that are happening here. So that's kind of a cool thing for those folks who, again, for whom this building really is important. That would be cool to see. So we're going to walk down that road first. We're not putting it on the open market. We're not going to developers. We're not doing that. We're going to go down that road first with these 3 groups. We do have a real estate agent that's doing it at a different fee level, because we're essentially bringing them people to do the negotiating on that, so that it's not any of us. It's done all above. If we get to that point and we have 3 offers, I guess we'll figure that out. If we end up to that point, we have 1 offer, we'll figure that out. But that's kind of where we are with that. I think we will have 1 offer here soon. I think we may have more, and then we'll need to decide what happens with that. But those current ones actually don't knock the building down. They keep the building. Any questions kind of specifically about that? Yes.
I'll preface this by saying what Kayla said about money driving it is, I think, super, super important. So yep. I don't know that this, I'd rather it be, personal opinion aside, is there potentially a different return on the sale price if we were to do an option where it stayed? And I think we could decide what, eyes wide open. Is there a potential less return, and is it worth it then to have it continue to be a ministry space instead of a taco shop?
No, because what we're putting out there is its value. So yes, to answer your question, we're gonna say nope. This is the value as told to us by real estate agents and comps and all that, and then let them decide from there. So. Anything else on sale? All right. Can we go to, I guess, next steps then? So, a couple of next steps. Again, I think the next meeting we have will probably be a couple of votes. I think the next meeting will be a vote on leaving the ECC just because that needs to see, honestly, if that's going to happen, and then that kind of moves everything else along. And there may be a vote on sale, just because, again, I'll just be honest, that's happening faster than I thought it would. I didn't think that would happen necessarily so quickly. Doesn't mean, we need to decide quickly or they're going to kick us out. That's not it. I just, once that's there, I think they'll want to know. So, we can't sit on that forever. So I think we may have those votes here coming up. And we'll try and keep you informed of those as they come up. In order for us to be able to figure out whether or not Holy Cross is the right option for us, and again, let's just name that as a reality. We don't have to do that. That's something that they're going to invite us to do. We can say no. What that means for us is, we could try and find another church partner. We could find land and build from scratch. We could go all online from the Dell's house. We could do... We could do all of those things, but in order for us, I think, to make the best informed decision about Holy Cross, at least, I'd like for us to go over there on the 11th, do this Advent workshop. I think that makes a ton of sense for us to get to know some of their folks, get to be able to do this together. And then just, again, to think about it logistically, then we would need to do a number of things, and you'll see them immediately as you go over there. You'll be like, oh, yeah, we need to fix this space and do all this. Yep, we would. We'd have to do that in January, February, or March, so that by Easter, that would be kind of the target that we would all be doing this together. But that also means if we're going to say no to that, we need to figure that out soon, so we can kind of plan accordingly. Yes?
For the vote for the sale.
Yes.
Do you vote for each one that would come up, or do you have to wait until they're all there, and then, or are we voting like, yes, we're going to sell, but we're not voting on the specificity of it?
That's a really interesting question that we actually don't know. We hadn't considered the possibility that we were going to get more than one offer. Yeah. So we're going to ask our lawyer to see what the best way to do that is. Yeah, that's been a new wrinkle. So that's a good question there. And then, just to get in people's heads, again, we've had people talk about, what can I do to help? Well, honestly, we're going to have to build a structure out there. We're going to have to build a 20 by 10 structure. And I'd love some creative thought on that. We can just build a structure. We can drag out a portable, there's all kinds of different options that we can do. But I'd like some creative thought on that. We would need to convert a space into a nursery and talk about that. And I just need to name this, signage and name. They have brought up that they'd like to be part of a conversation about a new name. They think that would be a fun thing to do as part of a new merger. For those of us who originally thought of the name Hope, I'll just be honest, that isn't a deal breaker for me. I like Hope. I like what it says. It said a lot for us. But I can have that conversation. We can talk about a new name. Maybe it's time. Maybe it's an opportunity for that. So, doesn't mean it has to happen. Again, I think for them, they're pretty clear keeping Holy Cross isn't something really important, that they'd rather do something new. So, maybe they will. Or New Hope. Rogue One, that could be all right. We got to get out of here pretty soon. Other questions?
I'll channel my inner Mikey here because
thank you.
I know she skipped out.
Yeah.
I just want to step, I've been blessed to be on the leadership team for 3 years, and, Bill's had to do most of the talking here. But just wanted to, reemphasize, the leadership team has been involved in this discussions since I've been on the team for 3 years, probably prior to that. And it's been different discussions because when I started there, I was talking about this location, and that was pre-pandemic, and that changed a whole lot of things. And there's been a lot of discussions after that as well. And just to know, it's a group effort. And the leadership team is made up of folks from former Hope, former Sanctuary. So it's been a lot of in-depth discussions and not always easy discussions, because we know this is not an easy decision. It's an emotional decision. So just, I just want to get there because I know Bill's been doing most of the talking. This is not the Bill Wallace show of what's been going on here. The leadership team has had discussions. People that aren't on the leadership team, I know Bill's been talking with members of the congregation. So please know that, this hasn't been an easy conversation, and we've just been trying to, as best as we can, to follow what we feel is the journey that God's been pushing us towards, and what's going to make the best sense not only for this congregation, but Holy Cross potentially, and Lake Stevens, the Snohomish County. The one thing that kind of jumped to me this past couple weeks has kind of come to my heart is, you may remember when we first merged that as part of the building team, I was able to really do a fun project of kind of going back over the history of this where our roots go back well over 100 years to folks that originally started the congregation here in Everett, and just looked at that by the decades. And first of all, that is amazingly cool to think that we're tied into a congregation that's been around for over 100 years. I'm not sure that there's a lot of churches in Snohomish County that can say that. And they went through at least 3 times where they moved locations, maybe more. That's the ones I came across, including when they decided to purchase this land and build this building. And I'm sure every one of those times it was not easy. And I'm sure there were lots of people that were hesitant to do it. And there were a lot of people maybe that were for it. But they had the discussions, they made the decision, and obviously I think they made right decisions when they did it, because they lasted well over 100 years. So whatever way we go, whatever way these votes go, the hope is just that we're going to be building the foundation for another 100 years of this congregation to be around, impactful in this area, and hopefully beyond that. So just wanted to pass along, make sure, again, we forced Bill to kind of be up here this whole time and doing all the talking, that, it's definitely, there's lots of people involved, and we still want to hear everybody's thoughts, and it comes to votes. Vote your heart, because, that it's, God and the prayers are going to be telling you what's the right decision for you and what you think the right decision is for Hope. So we'll see. It's moved fast, but that might be a good thing. So, yeah, I'll turn myself on.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Before we wrap up, again, I'm happy to talk about all stuff afterwards as well. I know we want to have a Mexico meeting conversation too that we need to get to. We'll do that down at the Milk House for anybody that wants to talk about that. We're hoping to do that here in August 7th to the 14th, more or less, looking at a trip down there, and that would be a really cool thing to do together. Anything else for the good of the order before we kind of wrap up right now? Rogue Hope. That's a cool name. That's a very cool name. I like it. No? All right. Thank you all for coming, and really appreciate it. Yeah, continue to ask questions. Talk to anybody on the leadership team. We're here to try and answer what we can. Thank you all so much. Good. Okay.